The White Pill is available now at whitepillbook.com. This episode is brought to you by Patriot Gold. Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. It is a huge privilege and honor of mine to be able to welcome Dinesh D'Souza to the show, author, pundit, and filmmaker. I was very privileged to be able to see the premiere of your new film, Police State, at Mar-a-Lago a couple of weeks ago. I brought my 6-year-old nephew, and you're a grandfather, so you can appreciate how fun that must have been. I'm training him at a young age to be a troublemaker. So he went to all the women and said, "You look very beautiful. Were you born as a girl?" And how do you get mad at a kid?
Perfect opening line.
I was concerned going into the film that it was going to be Democrats bad, Republicans good. It was not that at all. I thought it was an excellent look at the growth of authoritarianism within America. And this has not been a gradual process. This has been going on for decades at this point. I know you personally have been a target of the government and had been pardoned by President Trump. The film's called Police State. People can download it now, streaming now. Can you talk a bit about what went into the making of this film?
Sure. The film sprang out of a simple realization, and that is that we're no longer the free country that we've always assumed ourselves to be. And this, for me, came as a kind of a shock. I mean, I'm an immigrant to the United States. I came as a teenager, and I was struck not just by the abundance of America, but also by the fact that there are these, well, the founders call them unalienable rights. And these rights are not supposed to be up to political referendum or even majority override. Majority shouldn't be able to smash your free speech rights or my right to conscience or our rights to assemble or equal justice under the law. And yet, here we are in America, 2023, and not a single one of our basic rights is completely secure. Think about it. Just go down the list. Free speech? No. Freedom of conscience? No. Freedom of assembly? No. Right to petition the government? No. Second Amendment? No. Right of privacy against unreasonable search and seizure? No. Equal rights and equal justice under the law? No. So this is a serious situation, and the film is intended to put a spotlight on that. Now, in thinking about the film, I thought I need to show the genealogy, the origin of this police state. How did it start? How did it mature and develop? And then I also needed to have two kinds of people in the film. One is whistleblowers, informants, people who have some working knowledge of how this kind of evil sausage-making machine functions. And second, I wanted to have ordinary Americans who are just going about their normal life, and then bam, they come face to face with the police state. And this is important because I wanted to answer the guy who says, in effect, that I'm not Donald Trump. You know, I didn't go in the Capitol on January 6th. I pay my taxes, so I'm safe. I'm invulnerable. I'll never hear the FBI helicopter over my lawn. And I wanted to show, well, don't be so hasty to say that, because our police state is metastasizing way beyond Trump and January 6th. It's affecting a lot of ordinary citizens. And so I wanted to have those guys in the movie.
So, well, there's one right that we do have that's still inviolate, which is the Third Amendment, which is we're not ever forced to quarter foreign government soldiers in our homes. So the Third Amendment is the one that they haven't touched yet. What was interesting to me is a lot of this. There's this line about how a conservative is a liberal who's been mugged, but there's a second part of that line, which is a liberal is a conservative who's been arrested. And in the 70s, especially, this was a cudgel that conservatives used over the left, which is soft on crime. These civil rights are only protecting criminals. And I remember when the Patriot Act was being passed, the argument is this is only going to be used against terrorists. And you have this image of, another 9/11 happening and someone's hostage and they've got this password and you got to get at him at any cost. But very quickly, we live in a time and a place where prominent personalities will say, if you're an NRA member, you're a terrorist. So very quickly, if it's only going to be used against terrorism, well, terrorists can be whoever the government decides is against it.
That's very true. And it is true that the expansion of surveillance power and other powers granted to the government in order to thwart foreign terrorists who want to kill us was redeployed. Now, I think the redeployment came initially in the Obama years, but it has escalated dramatically under Biden. I also think that the FBI in the years right after 9/11 perfected a certain type of entrapment
Yep.
strategy. And they did it because they were getting giant shovels of cash after 9/11. And then a year or two later, they looked around and realized in dismay there just aren't that many terrorist plots for them to foil.
Mhm.
So the money train was going to stop. And so they realized, how do we kind of keep it going bureaucratically? I mean, there's an energy in bureaucracy to keep growing. And so
Yes.
they realized, well, we kind of have to manufacture terrorism. Now, we're not going to do that in a sort of completely artificial way. What we have to do is find, you can say, people susceptible to extremist rhetoric. And in this case, it was first these sort of radical Muslim types, but they were, three kids at NYU who are like, anti-American slogans. They thought of themselves as jihadis and so on. And so the FBI would plan an informant, typically a Muslim informant. And the guy would say something like, well, you guys are big talkers, but I mean, why don't you join ISIS? And then they'd be like, well, we're not going to join ISIS, man. This is a joke. And they'd be like, no, you're saying you're a jihadi. Well, why don't you put your energy behind your convictions and join ISIS? Well, how do I join ISIS? Well, I mean, there's a training camp coming up in Pakistan, next spring. Why don't you go to that? Oh, come on, man. I don't have a passport. I don't have any money. I live with my mom.
Yeah.
So then the FBI is like, well, Muhammad can probably get you a passport. He'll show you how to do that. And then you need to do some weapons training. And there's a place so we can show you to do that. So basically, the FBI takes someone who is not a terrorist, not in a position to carry out any terrorism, nothing more than a bloviator and a big talker. And they induce this guy step by step to then show up at JFK to go to this ISIS training camp. And then, boom, he's busted. Press conference. The media is helpfully present to take photos and video. FBI pats itself on the back. We're amazing. We just busted this plot to overthrow. So you see that the stuff that we are more familiar with later, not only the Whitmer kidnapping, but January 6th, all of that had its roots in the aftermath of 9/11.
If you went back in time to, let's say, 2002 and 2003 and said this is the kind of thing that is and will happen, you would be regarded in Republican circles as a complete lunatic, like make Alex Jones look tame. And yet now this is very much an awareness within the mainstream of conservatism and the Republican Party. How do you think the Republican Party and conservatism in general have moved so far as to recognize that not only is this a theoretical threat, but a thing that is actually happening all the time in these United States?
Well, I mean, the reason the conservatives have realized this is because they became the targets. I mean,
Yeah,
think of
yeah.
the bitterness of the irony, right? The very people who supported the Patriot Act, supported the expansion of these surveillance powers to go after terrorists, find to their incredulity that they are being called terrorists. They are being likened to ISIS and Al Qaeda. So there's initially a sputtering sense of disbelief. In fact, initially, there's got to be a sort of "you're kidding, right?" type of
Right, right.
response. And then you realize that they are not kidding, and that they have actually shifted their priorities, and you are in their sights. And then you realize, wait a minute, I mean, this is not what these powers were given to the government to do. Something has gone terribly wrong here, even though, as you know, there were a few people, not that many, even at the beginning, people like Ron Paul, who did warn that these powers not only could but would be abused, and they turned out to be quite right.
So you were advisor to the Reagan administration, and one of the big kind of myths, I don't mean in the sense that it's false, but just talking points of conservatism is, Reagan and Tip O'Neill would kind of hash it out during the day, but they could still shake hands and have a round of golf in the afternoon. I think now conservatives understand that this kind of vision of we're going to shake hands and work with the Democrats is completely out the window. And if anything, we're going to shake hands and work against the people. When the parties work together, it tends to be things like the Patriot Act or just massive bailouts of the banks and so on and so forth. Do you think that the Democratic Party has moved in a more authoritarian direction? And or do you think this Reagan Tip O'Neill thing was always untrue?
Well, let's be clear what we mean by the Reagan Tip O'Neill thing, because I don't think it means that Republicans and Democrats could sort of resolve their differences, find a middle ground, shake hands on a deal. It was rather the belief that, look, we are fighting quite bitterly on the Hill and in policy matters over tax rates, over regulation, over unions, even over foreign policy. But at the same time, we do recognize that there is something bigger that does unite us, and that is we are Americans. We face certain common threats as Americans. So the arguments, even if bitter, are arguments in the end between friends. I think this is a critical difference between then and now. I don't think it's easy to see our political opponents, and this is reciprocal. They don't
Yeah.
either, as friends at all. In fact, we think that they are trying to destroy the America that we cherish, and the feeling is mutual. So this is clearly a new phase. I think the second thing is that there's a widespread belief, which I share, among Republicans and conservatives, that the Democratic Party has become completely gangsterized, not only in the sense of engaging in types of corruption. I mean, just compare Clinton, Obama, and the Bidens on the one hand with, let's say, JFK, Truman, and Carter on the other. I mean, the idea that Jimmy Carter would be systematically collecting bribes from foreign countries and using them, funneling them through Rosalind Carter, Billy Carter, money to one LLC going to another. This is unthinkable. It was as unthinkable for Carter as it was for Reagan, as it was for Bush. I mean, no one suspected or thought that those people went to the presidency to make money. But with the Clintons, yeah, for sure. With the Obamas, a little motives a little more complex, but yeah, and under Biden for sure. So not only have Democrats become corrupted and gangsterized, but I think they've become much more comfortable with brazen lying. They will put out false narratives, fully knowing that they're false. And they also are willing to trample on civil liberties to a degree that, quite honestly, I have found quite chilling. I did not expect even the left to go to this extreme.
There's also conservatives constantly talk about, and very fairly, I think, this double standard. I'm thinking specifically of Lois Lerner, who was head of the IRS. There was this questioning of whether they were targeting conservative leaning groups, and her computer kind of wiped itself out, and so did all the backup servers. Now, even taking the politics out of this at all, if you're the IRS and you're having data about people's income taxes and other sorts of sensitive things, if this isn't being kept secure, this is just malpractice on a kind of felonious scale. And yet there were really no consequences as a result of this. Whereas, you donated money to a Senate campaign and you were made into a felon and later pardoned by President Trump. It seems very clear that the long arm of the law is only reaching or predominantly in one direction.
Well, I think that's true. Although I think it is also necessary to start to move beyond the rhetoric of the double standard. And here's why. The rhetoric of the double standard is itself hinged on a naive premise. And the naive premise is that the other side, the people who you're pointing these double standards out to, those people accept that justice should be impartial, accept that there should be a single standard. Now, if they don't accept it, then you're pointing to a double standard does no good. It's kind of like imagine going to Che Guevara and saying, well, you treat the communists completely differently than you treat the capitalists. He goes, yeah, that's because I'm a Marxist. We think the
Right.
capitalists are evil. We think the communists are our comrades. So naturally, we treat them differently. We are not committed to treating communists and capitalists equally, right? So from the police state's point of view, there is no double standard. I think that the police agencies of the government look at it this way. There is one side, one ideological camp, and one party that is helping us to build the police state. They're expanding our powers. If we do bad stuff, they cover up for us. And so our job is to cover up for them. And so whereas the other side, the Republicans, the conservatives, however ineffectively, they are the party that is blocking the police state or trying to block the police state or inconvenient for the police state. And so from the police state's point of view, we're not being inconsistent. We have a consistent standard of helping our friends, the left, the Democrats, and going after our enemies, the right, the conservatives.
Folks, did you know that traditional bed sheets can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat? It can lead to acne, allergies, stuffy noses, and it is just gross. Miracle Made offers a whole line of self-cleaning, eco-friendly bedding such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent 99% of bacteria and require 3 times less laundry. Here's what makes them great. They've got self-cooling properties for better quality sleep. They're using silver-infused fabrics. Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating, designed to keep at the perfect temperature all night long. You get better sleep every night. And Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands. They're the perfect gift for your spouse, friends, or family. Who doesn't want better sleep and luxurious feeling bed sheets? And they come with 3 free towels. You get 2 gifts in one, just in time for the holidays. Go to trymiracle.com/malice to try today or gift it to somebody special this holiday season. We got a special deal for our listeners. Save over 40%. And if you use promo MALICE at checkout, you get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Here's the thing. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you aren't 100% satisfied, you get a free refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/malice and use the code MALICE to claim your 3-piece towel set for free and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/malice to treat yourself, a friend, or a loved one this holiday season. Hey folks, Michael Malice here. You might know me as a Twitter troll, terrible author, insufferable podcaster, but I'm also an underwear model, and the underwear that I model and wear every day is Sheath underwear. If you go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code MALICE, you get 20% off and you can be inside my pants. Why I love Sheath is they have special dual pouch technology for both parts of your male anatomy. It sounds weird. The first time I tried them on, I'm like, what is this? And now I literally wear them every day. The great thing about Sheath, it was developed by an Iraq war veteran. And overseas, it gets really, really hot. And Bobby decided, all right, what can I do to make sure I'm not suffering here in this heat? And thanks to his research, you can be comfortable in the comfort of your own home. It's great for cold weather. It's great for hot weather. It keeps you secure and comfortable. And there's something really exciting about going on a job interview, going on a date, doing a podcast, knowing that your underwear has you in its grip, nice and secure and comfortable. Go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code MALICE. You get 20% off, and you can get one step closer to looking as much like a hunk as myself. Let's get back to the show. One of the scenes that was very kind of moving in your film was toward the end, spoiler alert, where you kind of prophesied a raid on a church where the preacher is being arrested in the house of worship. And again, this would sound crazy if this sort of thing weren't happening right now in Canada. And things like people's homes being barged in for Thanksgiving dinner with their families. So things that would have been called some kind of crazy fever dream even 10 years ago are now actually part of everyday practice just north of the border. I'm sure you share my concerns about looking at Canada being like, holy crap, this is where America could be headed very, very easily.
I mean, we saw under COVID that some of the
Yeah.
bad things in America were exceeded in Canada. I also saw some horrific scenes in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of dispelled my Crocodile Dundee view of Australia. I thought those guys were like pioneers, just sort of unruly characters who kind of lived in the backwoods and couldn't be easily tamed. But no, my gosh! And then Europe. So this raised the specter, and I mentioned this phrase in the film, of a police planet. Because to the degree that China and Russia, you got Iran, you've got these authoritarian societies. Now, if the Western societies succumb to a different sort of tyranny, then you basically have tyranny all over, and it merely differs. Are you going with the sort of the Oriental variety of tyranny, or are you going to go with the Western, the Anglo-Saxon variety? So this is a very scary idea because by definition, there's no place to run. Everybody's offering tyranny on the menu. It's simply a matter of which type.
Do you think President Trump was naive in his first term when thinking about who and what he was up against?
Yes, I think that with Trump, there are some advantages to being an outsider, but there are also disadvantages. When you're an outsider, you come in without preconceptions, you're willing to say things and do things that haven't been done before. That gives you a certain type of liberation. You're not within parameters that have been carefully demarcated already in advance. And here's a disadvantage. You don't really know how government functions. You
Yeah.
don't know the depth of the sort of the bureaucratic sector, where you think you're at the ground floor and then you look and you realize there are four floors below that, going into the basement and below. So I think with Trump, he thought, look, I mean, there's a lot of waste and fraud in the government, and there's a lot of scammery going on. But I don't think he thought, look, you go to the CDC, these guys with the white lab coats, these people study infectious disease, they're not going to tell you the truth when there is an epidemic. I think Trump thought, of course they are. Similarly, I think he thought the police agencies of government, yeah, you might have a bad apple here or another one over there, but the idea that there could be a whole corrupt set of incentives going all the way down so that even good people could be made to do bad things. I don't think I think Trump gravely underestimated the depth of corruption in the police agencies of the government, and this is why he never controlled his own Justice Department, his own FBI, his own DHS, Department of Homeland Security. You have this amazing phenomenon of the police agencies of government going after Trump in the Trump administration.
And the other, it's also the military when they boasted about lying to him about what's going on in Syria, and the corporate press were just applauding. And this is such a complete undermining of our system, where the commander in chief is a civilian and the military is answerable directly to him. So, if this was any other context, it would be a huge scandal that the military has gone rogue and are brazenly boasting about defying the commander in chief. But there's nary a peep from the New York Times and other agencies like this, because they only regard, in my opinion, elections as legitimate when it's a candidate they approve of is the victor.
Well, this raises a very important point that the very people who claim to be saving democracy don't believe in it.
Yeah.
And it's quite obvious because, look, take Trump. Let's say that Trump is just as corrupt as they say. Let's just say that he has flouted just as many laws as they say. Let's just say that they have the evidence on him as they insist they do. All right. It would seem that in a democratic political system, when you're dealing with the leading candidates of the major parties, this is something that can be adjudicated democratically. If
Yeah.
you trust the American people, put forward the evidence, lay it out, go, man, you don't want to vote for this guy. Look at this long list of offenses that he's done. Here's all the evidence that he did them. And the American people would recoil in horror. It would be a democratic victory in a landslide. The very fact that they're trying to lock him up, keep him off the ticket, one way or the other, shows that they don't have any confidence that the American people will see it that way. In fact, I'm not sure that they have any confidence in their case at all.
Yeah.
If you put someone, even an intelligent person, let's just say a dean at a left wing university, and you say, look, leaving aside all the mumbo jumbo, like, what is it that Trump did that we can all agree should get a guy like that locked up? What did he do? Well, he inflated the values of his properties to get loans, even though he repaid the loans, and the banks have no problem with it, and there's no outstanding debt issue. That doesn't make any sense. Well, he took some classified documents and he was a little pugnacious because there was some back and forth with the archives. He didn't give them back in time. True, other presidents have taken documents, and Joe Biden has documents going back to his Senate days, but there's some narrow difference between the Trump documents and I mean, all this stuff breaks down into absurdity. And yet they are straight-facedly pushing forward with these accusations. So I think that to some degree the left has lost faith in democracy, even though, as I say, they claim to be its most kind of energetic custodians.
Well, I often say that they use language to manipulate, not to communicate. And I've heard when they refer to democracy, they're not referring to a process, but to a series of policy positions. So when they say our democracy, they mean our hegemony, meaning a country and society based under certain progressive ideology and that permeates literally every aspect of that society, from video games and entertainment to schools to the law and everything in between. And you see that, I think, pretty fairly constantly. Um, I had Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, who I'm sure you're familiar with, on the show several weeks ago, and he was describing Trump as fascist. And I said to him, okay, let's suppose Trump is back in the White House and you have a MAGA majority in the House and the Senate. What are these fascists going to do? And his response was, uh, we would have a return of the ban from immigration, from travel from Muslim majority, several Muslim majority countries that have, terrorist aspects in them, and he would push back on LGBT rights. And I'm like, wait, this is your definition of fascism? Limited, somewhat limited immigration and a 90s Democrat view on the LGBT issue? I mean, from there to Hitler is not exactly next door. So it seems interesting that they use that term, but there really is no argument what it is that he's going to do that is so horrific.
Well, Trump is remarkably, I think, politically kind of a moderate.
Yeah.
And by that I mean he's slightly right of center, but he is quite to the left of a number of other people running in the Republican primary, believe it or not. And he was recognized to be a moderate for most of his career. So the strange thing with Trump is he inspires a reaction as if he were somehow on the far, far right, even though there's sort of a recognition that he has no interest in any of that. I mean, first of all, Trump is probably less hostile to LGBTQ than probably any other Republican candidate. In his deep kind of bottom sentiments, I think he's more at home. He's more at ease. He doesn't think it's a big deal, and he has been quite openly, pro-gay in a lot of ways. Much more so than I think Nikki Haley would be, or probably any of the other, DeSantis or anyone else. The other thing is that I have this line in the film. I say, you can't be a police state guy. You can't be running a police state when you are running away from the police
Yeah.
agencies of the government. I mean, imagine the Gestapo going after Hitler. Imagine the SS, secretly taping Hitler and Himmler. I mean, if that were the case, they wouldn't be running the police state. The main point of running a police state is that you get to do that to everybody else, and those agencies don't get to do it to you.
Dinesh, you've been done a lot of work in kind of tracing the behind the scenes machinations of people on the right and the left. And I think conservatives are increasingly aware that what is presented them at surface value is often a show or a misdirection like a magician uses. But what's really going on is behind the scenes. I'd like to hear your thoughts on a good friend of mine's hypothesis, which is if Biden is somehow pushed off the ticket, that the next person in line would not be Gavin Newsom, but this would be Hillary Clinton's turn to get her redemption arc.
A very interesting idea. It really, I think it depends upon who is the really powerful figure in the Democratic Party. Is it Hillary Clinton or is it Barack Obama?
Right.
And I'm not 100% sure of the answer to it, although if I had to put money on it, I would bet on Obama, because I think Obama established a certain sacrosanct zone of you can't criticize me. The level, I mean, just to give you a small example from my own case. I come out of a milieu in DC where I was there from '89. I was there from '85 when I joined Policy Review, then the Reagan years. Then I went to AEI. So I was in DC from '85 to about 2000. And DC is it's a monoculture, which
Yeah.
means I was very friendly with people. I knew lots of people at the Washington Post, obviously the Washington Times, NPR. I was regularly on National Public Radio, was regularly on CNN. And so I'd go to the Trover bookstore in DC, and there's my pal EJ Dion from the Washington Post. We were both looking up books, we chat, and so on. So when my felony case came up, I thought it's interesting. It'd be interesting to see how people I know and have
Yeah.
known for years will react. And typically they'd come up to me and they go, "Oh man, Dinesh, this is really horrible. You're really being shafted," and so on.
Mhm.
And I'd be like, "Well, it'd be really nice for you to say this, because there are lots of people on the right who are defending me. Megyn Kelly's defending me on CNN, but it's dead silence on the left. So I'm not telling you to go against Obama. I'm simply saying to point out that no one in American history has ever been prosecuted like this for doing what I did. I'm a first time offender. There's no corruption. I wasn't trying to get something out of the deal. I exceeded the campaign finance law. Normally, I'd get, a slap on the wrist and a community service. And then they were like, they're uncomfortable. I can't really do that. And then I realized, wow, this is because Obama is basically the Messiah as far as you're concerned. You just cannot go against him. Now, Hillary never had that kind of totemic status. Besides, remember, Obama had 2 terms. Hillary has never made it to the White House. So for all these reasons, I think that although Hillary is, begrudging and she thinks it really should have been her, and she's still a force, it's hard for me to see that she is moving she's the Biden ventriloquist, if you will. So for these reasons, I think it is Obama. Not necessarily that he's doing it all directly himself. He might be doing it through surrogates, the Obamaites, who surround Biden. But my guess is that if they do move Biden out for whatever reason, it will be those people who make that decision.
Oh, I agree with you, but I just think this conservative idea that it's definitely going to be Gavin Newsom, they will often surprise you, and it's a lot of times, they might have him in the back pocket because he's still young, and have him on board for, let's say, another 4 years from now or 8 years from now, and there is this big sense, I think, in Democratic politics that we have to, like the show Quantum Leap, we have to go back and undo what we got wrong. So for them, they are trying to do everything in their power to basically make it as if Trump was never president. And what better way to kind of like fix the so-called mistake of 2016 than to reinstall her into the White House and really, kind of stick it to MAGA.
Well, that's an interesting theory. I mean, I think that we are the country right now. And if you think about it, this is the point touched on in the film. We have a police state without a dear leader.
Yeah.
Unlike Xi, who's running China, or Castro, you have these kind of figures. Kim Jong Un in North Korea, Pol Pot, Stalin. But our police state is being run by kind of a junta, and they are the ones manipulating Biden. He's obviously willing. I mean, he's in the canoe. I think he's happy to be in the canoe, but he's not steering the canoe. Now, here's the question: why would those people who have essentially unchecked power with no responsibility, because we don't even know who they are? So why would those people want to bring in some highly opinionated,
That's true.
dynamic new person who would start telling them all what to do?
Yeah.
So I think this is why they like Biden. They will hang on to Biden because they've got the perfect guy. It's kind of like, listen, all blame will go to Biden. It's actually difficult to see Biden as irredeemably wicked because he's so dumb. So his very stupidity plays to his benefit because he's like, what? Where do I get off the stage? So it's like, wow, this is the Machiavellian evil man who's, it's hard to believe. And so the real evil people who are around him are like, this is a perfect arrangement. We've got this absurd figure. And true, we're the laughing stock of, I mean, there's a price to be paid for this, right? The whole world knows this is a joke. The United States is shredding its kind of a reputation that's been accumulated since World War II. I mean, terrible things are happening to the country, I'm very sorry to say, but I don't think that the people who are running the country care about that.
Folks, when you dress well, you feel better and you get to be more successful in every aspect of your life. And I want to talk to you a bit about Rhone. Men's closets were due for radical reinvention, and Rhone stepped up to the challenge. Rhone's commuter collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible set of products known to man, and here's why. Rhone helps you get ready for any occasion. With their commuter collection, it offers the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, and polos. You never have to worry about what to wear when you have the Rhone commuter collection. Their comfortable 4-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way. From your commute to work, to your 18 holes of golf, to listening to your favorite podcast. It's time to feel confident without the hassle. With Rhone's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the products. It's that easy. And with their Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. And on top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable. You can ditch the dry cleaner all together. It's comfortable, it's mobile, it's versatile. The commuter collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Just head to rhone.com/malice, RHONE.com/malice. Use promo code malice. You get 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/malice and use code malice. It's time to find your corner office comfort. Folks, heart attack, blood clots, strokes, kidney failure, this can all be found on the back of an ibuprofen bottle. And to top it all off, ibuprofen doesn't even get to the main cause of your pain and swelling problems. It's only temporary pain relief. It's masking the true problem, which is inflammation. Ibuprofen isn't a solution to your pain. Right now, you can go to getnativepath.com/malice to see your special offer for being a loyal listener. Ibuprofen isn't only ineffective, it's downright dangerous, especially for seniors. And that's why researchers are saying to add this Antarctic super nutrient to your diet. I'm talking about omega-3 fatty acids, but not just any form of omega. These are omega-3 fatty acids sourced from wild-caught krill. The omega-3 content from krill oil has been shown to support healthy blood pressure, circulation, brain health, as well as reduce inflammation, swelling, and joint pain. In fact, it can outperform ibuprofen, Advil, and Tylenol, and it doesn't have the dangerous side effects mentioned above either. Better yet, for a limited time, you can grab Native Path Antarctic Krill Oil for as low as $23 a bottle. Just go to getnativepath.com/malice right now to get your special offer for being part of our audience. Let's get back to the show. One of the lines I always say, and this was really brought close to home in the film, is that at least even Stalin had the courtesy to knock. So these no-knock raids, I'm very grateful for the rise of technology and the omnipresence of cameras in private hands, because if you or I sat down and described one of these no-knock raids at someone's home, it's one thing to hear the words, but in the film you have many cases of the actual footage, and you have people with their families, some suburban house. It's almost like some 1950s sitcom, that having breakfast, and they're just doors broken in, guns pointed, without any reason for this whatsoever. There's no hostage situation. It's not like someone's about to detonate an atom bomb or flush an armada of guns down the toilet. It's just nonsensical. Can you talk a bit about how we got to this point where this seems like a blatant attack on the constitutional guarantee of unreasonable search and seizure, because these searches are not at all reasonable by any standard?
No, they're not. And I think again the problem was that a lot of the loosening of the standards, even before 9/11, came in dealing with the mafia.
Yeah.
Because and some of this is in the movie The Untouchables, the idea that you can't get Al Capone, so let's get him on taxes. And this was sort of, a lot of people chuckled. It's like, oh, ha ha ha, we got him one way or the other. But if you think about it, it's not the right way, right? I mean, it's kind of like saying we don't have the evidence to convict OJ. We know he did it, so let's plant drugs in his home. No, you can't plant drugs in his home. That's not the way to get him. The way to get him is to actually have the evidence that he committed the crime in the first place. So even in my case, some of the way that they went after me, it's like, Dinesh, we're going to charge you with mail fraud. I'm like, mail fraud? They're like, yeah, because you put your check in the mail. They're like, we're going to get you on bank fraud. I'm like, bank fraud? They're like, yeah, because you took money out of your bank account. I'm like, you're redescribing the same thing I did, which is donate to a candidate 3 different ways, as if these are 3 separate offenses, except the bank fraud and the mail fraud would carry long prison sentences. And I know your goal here is not really to do that, but to use that as a legal bludgeon to get me to plea bargain. And then everyone on the left can jump up with, see, he admits it. He himself says he did it, not recognizing that even an innocent person would plead guilty under those circumstances. So this is a ransacking of law, and an abuse of justice. And that's why sometimes conservatives will say to me things like, and there are Republicans, believe me, who say this even now. They go, well, Dinesh, I don't know what police did. We're supposed to be back the blue. How can we really be against the FBI? And I'm like, where's the inconsistency? We are obviously for the police when they're doing their job, when they're following the law, just like we don't support police brutality or police planting drugs on somebody. By the same token, police states are inherently lawless. If the FBI is exceeding its authority, if it's doing these no-knock raids on people, when the guy's attorney called you last week and told you, I'll be happy to bring this guy in, you don't need to go smashing through his door. And then when you are going after people because some mom went to a school board meeting and protested, so now you're following her and reading her emails and so on to find out if she's a domestic terrorist. I mean, this is so out of control that if the Republican Party doesn't unify behind stopping it, and I see no signs that they're doing it. By the way, a bunch of Republicans recently just voted $300 million plus for a new FBI complex. And I say to myself, wait a minute, when the FBI is telling Newsweek that the MAGA Republicans are a special category of target, they're targeting Republicans, and you're giving them the means to target you even more. I don't even know what to say to you.
Well, I was very gladdened that one of the points you made in the film is that it's important for people to arm themselves instead of saying, well, just go out and vote Republican and this problem is going to go away. That is completely fallacious. And obviously, I'm glad to hear that you made that very explicit. And I think what happens is when you have an armed population, you look at what happens when a population is disarmed. You know, for years, these gun control people in America were talking about how great it was in Australia that they got rid of all the guns and how wonderful it is. And then Australia becomes a giant prison colony once again, quite effortlessly during COVID. So if you do have this armed population, not only does it keep neighborhoods safer, because if you're a burglar and you have to wonder, listen, if this guy break into this house, there might be someone with the barrel of a gun pointing at me, and I'm in a community where he would be in his rights to do so, as opposed to New York City, which I had to leave to come here to Austin because just last week or the week before, there was a woman being assaulted and a guy protected her from being possibly killed, and he's the one who got arrested. So they are criminalizing self-defense, but legalizing assault. And one of the things that is an underlying point in this film, which I thought was excellent, is these people are not stupid. And even if they are stupid, if you're doing something over and over again and it's not changing, you want this to happen.
You want this to happen, and so we explore. One thing I wanted the film to do is go into territory where it answers questions that people didn't even know were questions. So one question would be something like, police states tend to be very much law and order, right? You can't go on the Beijing subway and start robbing people.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
going to be hit over the head, the cops will come, you'll never be seen again. So police states go, at least we're going to give you some law and order. Well, our police state doesn't. And so that's an anomaly. Why does our police state allow this rampant criminality in the city? So that's an interesting question, and we explore that in the film. Another one is, what's the connection between the police state and an open border?
Yeah.
Because this is a puzzle, right? Normally, police states are closed. Can't get in, can't get out. Try getting into North Korea. Try getting out. You can't, right? The Berlin Wall is a kind of excellent symbol of a police state putting a cordon right around the whole country and sealing it. Why is our police state porous? Why is it so easy to come across the border? And there is an answer to it. And the answer is that we are not North Korea. We're not a full-fledged police state. We're a police state under construction. And a
Yeah.
police state under construction or in the making needs a constituency that will back the police state. And so the Democrats see in an open border a way to enlarge their long-term constituency. And this, they think, will redound to the benefit of their efforts to build a police state. So I'm proud of the fact that I think in the film we incorporate a lot of things that people know. We cinematically show them things that they haven't seen, and then we raise questions that push the debate forward to say, look, don't think it's as bad as it's going to get. It actually could get a lot worse. And quite honestly, when the police state finally snaps its jaws shut, our options then become a lot more limited.
Yeah, I remember very vividly when Mike Bloomberg had been mayor of New York City and he was making it illegal to have like big gulps that are too big at 7-Eleven. And Mike Huckabee was saying, oh, this is just like North Korea. And I was sitting there shaking my head. I'm like, do you really think that they have the problem in North Korea is that their sodas aren't big enough? I mean, they don't have soft drinks or things of treats of any kind like that. So there is this naivete, I think, in America, which is decreasing, thankfully. And thanks to people like you for speaking out. For if people like, America's the worst country in the world, America's the most racist country in the world, all these kind of epithets. And like, do these people not have a map or look at history? I mean, things can get so much worse so quickly. And thankfully, we still do have enough free speech in this country where people can point out what is happening and mobilize people to do something about it. One of the other things you talked about in the film, which I thought was absolutely excellent, is how with the rise of parents becoming more involved in their children's educations and these school board councils and what kids are being taught in school while simultaneously insisting that they're not being taught these things in school and this is just crazy talk, and now they're being targeted by the police state. Can you talk about that story that's in the film?
Yeah, I wanted in the film to show, pro-life activists who are, these are people who go to these abortion clinics and they want to try to talk those women out of it. Now, that can't be easy to do. There's probably powerful forces impelling a woman to get to the clinic in the first place. But anyway, they're welcome to try. That's part of their free speech. And yet these guys somehow get targeted and in many cases entrapped, as if to say they're blocking reproductive services, even though they're doing nothing more than praying or just calling out these women, please reconsider, please come talk to us, things like that. But I think even more outrageous is the targeting of the traditional Catholics. Because the traditional Catholics, there is in Catholicism a complex debate about the Latin Mass, and there's an old fashioned Catholicism that likes the way the Mass used to be. Now, think about it. The FBI uses that, a theological argument involving essentially linguistics, over that's supposed to be a sign of radicalism. As if to say, if you want a Latin Mass, you're some kind of cultic, far out, potential domestic terrorist. Nothing could be more nonsensical. And moms who go to school board meetings, and we feature a couple of them in the movie. One of them, goes to a school board meeting, and there's like a helicopter above. And there are these unmarked cars, a DHS van. I mean, think of the level of intimidation here to ordinary moms. And then the other mom has her home raided by the FBI. And she describes that in kind of understated but pretty vivid detail. And so, this stuff, the point is, it's not that the film is warning that it's going to happen, it is happening. And, I hired a couple of FBI informants for the movie. I said, look, guys, in some cases, I've got footage, I've got surveillance footage, dash cam footage. Great, we'll use it. But in other cases, we're going to recreate an FBI raid. We're going to recreate what happened, and I want to do it with clinical accuracy. I want the things to be said to be exactly what would be said. I want the weapons to be the same. I want the whole thing to be such that if somebody were watching from the DHS or from the DOJ, they would go, "Yeah, that's exactly how that would have gone down."
One of the things that you had in your film 2000 Mules was this concern that the 20,000 election was adjudicated unfairly. I don't know what.
2020.
Yeah, 2020. Excuse me. I don't know what I'm allowed to say on YouTube now these days. How comfortable are you that steps have been put into place to ensure that the rightful winner of 2024 is in fact recognized as the rightful winner?
I would say that I am mildly encouraged at some of the reforms that have been made. There are some improvements that are now in place. I did notice that in the 2022 election, the forms of cheating, at least the ones that I observed, were different than the ones that I documented in 2020. So you didn't have mules, for example, in Arizona, but you had a rather convenient glitch in Maricopa County right on election day when Republicans said, let's save our votes, let's all go vote on election day. Oops, the tabulators aren't really working. So this is to say that cheaters are going to try to find ways to do it. It doesn't mean they will always do it the same way. I mean, what I don't understand is a very simple remedy with regard to mules is to have 24-hour surveillance on all drop boxes. Very easy to do. We live at a time when every
Yeah.
parking lot, every mall is under surveillance. It's in the election rules. So Republicans don't have to pass laws. You just have to go in every county and insist we're not even under COVID right now. You can't make any excuses. You've got a whole year to do it. Install electronic surveillance on all drop boxes. If the Republican lawyers and the RNC and the campaigns are not doing that, this is absolute madness, because it's very easy to do it. As I say, it's in the rules, and it would stop at least that form of cheating, I think, cold.
Will you concede that my favorite senator, John Fetterman, it was a good thing that he beat the absolute bought and paid for rhino, Dr. Oz?
Well, looking at things from a purely entertainment point of view, I would have to say that I might have to go along with that. Um, no, I mean, this man is like a stand-up comedian, not entirely intentionally. Even the latest scene with him, with the Israel stuff, was comic at a certain level. So, look, I mean, we live, I think, at a dark time in the country. I mean, I cannot think, even going back to the Civil War, the country was divided. But think about it. They were divided on one thing: slavery. Were they divided morally? No. Were they divided fundamentally about the nature of what the country should be like, how people should raise their families, what the American dream meant, what upward mobility meant? No. There was a high degree of unanimity in the country, except on this one critical issue, certainly an important issue. But our level of polarization, our level of the poisoning across the board, the fact that it's very difficult even to see people across the aisle as fellow Americans, because what they want, at least is from our point of view, the ruination of the country, and they probably see it the same way. We are, I think, going through a dark period. But nevertheless, when we have to find diversion, amusement, and laughter where we can.
Folks, our national debt is a real world problem. Our government spends more in interest payments than it does funding the Pentagon. Biden wants to raise taxes on businesses and the wealthy, but use the additional revenue only to fund new social welfare programs. We've gone from $6 trillion in debt to $34 trillion in 20 years. There's a direct correlation to the national debt and price of gold. In 2010, our debt was $13 trillion. Gold's $1,000 an ounce. In 2020, our debt was $23 trillion, and gold is $1,500 an ounce. 2023, $33 trillion in debt. Gold is $2,000 an ounce. And Speaker of the House Mike Johnson warned our greatest threat to national security isn't Russia or China, it's our national debt. Call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention my name, Michael Malice, and you'll always get best-in-class service from Patriots protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold Group has the no-fee-for-life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no-fee-for-life IRA on qualifying rollovers. All you got to do is call 888-505-9845 to get a free investor guide, or even easier, just go to malicegold.com. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 7 years in a row. So call 888-505-9845 or go to malicegold.com. A great way to keep your wealth away from the forces of inflation, in my opinion. Folks, your welcome is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Hey, whether you love true crime or comedy or celebrity interviews, news, even motivational speakers, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue, right? Guess what? Now you can call the shots on your auto insurance too. Enter the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. The Name Your Price tool puts you in charge of your auto insurance by working just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, then they'll show you a variety of coverages that fit within your budget, giving you options. Now, that's something you want to press play on. It's easy to start a quote. You'll be able to choose the best option for you fast. It's just one of the many ways you can save with Progressive Insurance. Quote today at progressive.com to try the Name Your Price tool for yourself, and you can join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates, pricing coverage match limited by state law. Let's get back to the show. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to watch you tap dance. Who was a better president, Reagan or Trump?
Reagan.
Oh, okay.
Part of the reason for this, quite obviously, is that Reagan had 2 terms. Trump had 1. I think Trump did a pretty impressive job as an outsider in 1 term. Now, he didn't get everything right. Neither did Reagan, by the way. It was also Reagan's. I mean, I don't know. There's an element of sort of destiny in these things, right? Reagan came in at a time when the country was essentially on the verge of collapse. The oil crisis, Jimmy Carter. So Reagan was able to do both economic renovation and also to address the monumental issue of the second half of the 20th century, which was the Cold War.
Yeah.
Nobody in their right mind could have predicted that the Soviet Union would collapse without firing a shot. And so that sort of epitaph that Margaret Thatcher composed for Reagan, that he won the Cold War without firing a shot. And again, Reagan didn't do it alone. He did it with Thatcher and with Lech Walesa and with the Pope and with Mitterrand and Helmut Kohl. And so there were others who helped. But I think Reagan was a prime mover, and I think that's now recognized, and historians will see it that way. So I think because Reagan had a chance to sort of create Reaganism, which I would argue lasted till 2008. It wasn't until Obama was elected that the Reagan era really drew to an end. Even Clinton was pulled by the Reagan tide. The reason Clinton was a reasonably good president is that he had to be. He didn't have a choice. He was hemmed in by a Republican majority in both houses. That was Reaganism. It was still in full gear. Now, Trump has not been able to create that. In part because look at the backlash against Trump after the 2016 term. And so in that sense, Trump's presidency has got to be seen as a pretty impressive 4 years under the circumstances, but clearly unfinished. And Trump, I think, knows that. That's why Trump keeps saying, if I get back, I will do this. This time I'll do that. And this time I'll really get those guys. And it's kind of his way of saying, of admitting without ever admitting it. Trump's never going to say, I got it wrong. I goofed. He's basically saying that he's learned some lessons from the first term. At least that's how I read it.
Like you, I'm an immigrant and I own Margaret Thatcher's bookcases. They're in my living room. So I never feel like I've made it so much as looking at those and having that furniture in my home. Can you walk us through? It was not a big window between you coming to the States and meeting with President Reagan. Can you walk us through what that felt like? Were you nervous? What was he like in person? I mean, your thoughts must have been going a mile a minute.
I was really lucky to be in those years because remember, I mean, I met Margaret Thatcher,
Oh,
and
wow.
I didn't meet the Pope, but I met Gorbachev. I interviewed Gorbachev for my book on Reagan. Gorbachev had an interpreter named, I think, Pavelchenko, something like that. And I met that guy. So through that guy, God was able to set up an interview with Gorbachev, and Pavelchenko did the translation for me. And so this was really a time, I mean, I was in my 20s. I don't claim I didn't have direct interactions with Reagan, but I got to stand in the back of the room and
Yeah.
watch Reagan around the big round table interact with the senior staff. And it was very eye opening. And we had something that is a little rare in politics. We didn't just sort of admire Reagan, we had a genuine protective affection toward the man. And all of us felt that. And I think we had a very warm, protective feeling toward Reagan. And we were very excited to be part of the Reagan Revolution. I remember, in fact, when Reagan left office, he pulled a bunch of us together and he said, we have had a revolution. And he goes, and the revolution has been a success. And all of us were like, actually, unbelievably, it's not often that you get to sort of say that.
Yeah.
But we're like, he's not just saying that, because look around. I mean, the Berlin Wall is falling right now, and pretty soon Eastern Europe will be free. And then the Soviet Union will abolish itself. I mean, these monumental events were going on around us. We were very aware of the huge historical significance of living in that time.
Um, uh, how what do you think would happen if President Trump oh, wait, sorry, I want to ask you something else very specific about the film. I was really glad to see Dan Bonino's involvement. I think he's been excellent in recent days with his work, and he's a former police officer. So I think when someone has that resume and they're speaking about these issues, it hits so much closer to home as opposed to someone who's a pundit who has their own opinions. Can you talk about how you worked with him, how he got involved in the film?
Yeah, it's a collaboration that's worked well in many levels. Stylistically, Dan is he's a straight shooter. He's very emotional,
Yeah.
and he is also fearless. So these are all important qualities, because I'm like, if I'm making a film called Police State, we're probably going to come under surveillance. It could be that they will try to
Yeah.
push back at us in various ways. We can't have somebody who's going to like run for the exit if that happens. So I need a collaborator who has, a good a good vertebrae, and
Yeah.
is going to hold firm. And the second thing is, I come out of the sort of intellectual wing of the conservative movement. I'm good in an analysis, good in threading a story, good in being able to narrate. But what I wanted to do in the film is I wanted to take almost an understated approach. You'll notice that the things I say in the film are very moderate,
Yep.
and mostly questions like, well, what about this? And can you explain this anomaly? So since I was taking that role, Dan could take more the forceful, I can't believe this, and I don't even know if we're all that different from Russia at this point. So it's a nice complementarity. Each of us could play a role in the film that comes naturally to us, and I think it made the film stronger for it.
Where can people find the film, and what is the URL for the film?
Yeah, it's important because these days, because we're blocked in so many ways by the left, um, we have a one-stop shop, and that's the website, policestatefilm.net. Not .com, but .net, policestatefilm.net. The film is streaming now on multiple platforms, and so you can stream it to any device, including your big screen TV. And then also DVDs are available from 2 or 3 different places. And it's all on the website. The tabs are right there. In fact, there's even a little helpful instruction. How do I stream this to my big screen TV? So you can click and stream, or you can buy DVDs. And of course, with Christmas coming up, I mean, this is a good film to share. I find, and you probably agree with this, watching people watch the film in the theater, particularly, highly emotional.
Yes.
People, hugging people they don't even know, or tears coming down their face, willing to talk about the film after the film is over, and really want to stay and engage. I mean, so I think that this is a film that's worth sharing. It's also the way we navigate around the shoals of censorship, because
Yeah.
we're blocked in certain ways on YouTube, Google, Facebook. Amazon won't sell our DVDs, Walmart even. So we've got to find ways to reach our market. And there's a big market, but very often people don't know about it. So the one-stop shop, policestatefilm.net.
And I've seen it, and I recommend it to everyone watching this. Now, we're going to head over to malice.locals.com, where Dinesh will take your questions. Dinesh, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Well, I think what's I've enjoyed about it is it's just been, banter. I mean, it's the best of what a podcast is. We're just chatting back and forth, and so I felt relaxed about it. And although we have covered one big topic, which is police state, it's allowed us, I think, to throw some light on some related topics, including Reagan, including Sam Francis, that are not directly related, but have just organically part of our conversation. So for these reasons, it's been a very pleasant exchange.
You are welcome. Folks, Kyle MacLachlan, yes, Agent Cooper from Twin Peaks, has a brand new true crime podcast here on Podcast One. It's called Varnamtown. You have to check it out.
Sometime in the early 80s, REO Speedwagon's airplane made an unannounced, middle-of-the-night landing.
This is my friend Kyle MacLachlan, the star of Twin Peaks. And he's telling me about how he discovered a real-life Twin Peaks in rural North Carolina, not far from where he filmed Blue Velvet.
What was on the plane was copious amounts of drugs coming in from South America. Supposedly, Pablo Escobar went looking for other spots, quiet, out-of-the-way places to bring in his cocaine.
My name is Joshua Davis, and I'm an investigative reporter. Kyle and I talk all the time about the strange things we come across, but nothing was quite as strange as what we found in Varnamtown, North Carolina.
There's crooked cops, brother against brother. Everyone's got a story to tell, but does the truth even exist? Welcome to Varnamtown.
Varnamtown is available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hold on to your jingle bells. Pluto TV has all your holiday favorites for free. Enjoy Christmas classics like Scrooge with Bill Murray or Last Holiday with Queen Latifah. Plus, dive into festive channels like Holiday Movie Favorites by Lifetime or Hallmark Movies and more. Download the Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming holiday favorites on live channels and on demand. With thousands of free movies and TV shows, Pluto TV is your home for the holidays. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.